Magic in Frieren operates on three fundamental variables: the strength of the spell, the mana expended to cast it, and the caster's control over that mana.
ゼイリエ様に匹敵するほどの。
それほどまでにフリーレンの魔力
Strength refers to the inherent power the spell can deliver when successfully formed. Mana represents the raw magical energy consumed to activate the spell's effect. Control is the precision with which that mana is shaped, directed, and stabilized during casting. These three factors appear simple, but they form the backbone of every spell in the world, from the most basic utility magic to the most complex combat techniques. Each spell relies on balancing these variables in real time. Increasing strength requires either more mana or exceptional control to prevent the spell from destabilizing. Reducing mana consumption demands refined control so the caster can achieve the same output with less energy. Poor control, even with high mana reserves, results in inefficient, unstable magic that is weaker or slower than intended. Because of this, mastery in Frieren's world is not determined solely by magical capacity, but by how efficiently a mage manipulates the relationship between these three pillars. Spells also inherit these parameters regardless of their purpose. Utility magic, such as household spells, requires minimal strength but usually demands high control to perform small, precise actions without unnecessary mana usage. Combat spells push the system to its limits. They must deliver maximum strength quickly while maintaining stability under pressure. This makes the foundational mechanics essential for both learning new techniques and understanding why some spells became dominant in magical history. Every later development in Frieren's magic system builds directly on these three variables. Every spell in Frieren's world is governed by a single underlying principle. A mage can cast only what they can clearly visualize. Visualization is the mental act of constructing the spell's shape, behavior, and intended effect before mana is released. If the image in the mage's mind is incomplete or unstable, the spell cannot form correctly. This makes magical ability directly tied to imagination, clarity of thought, and the caster's internal understanding of the phenomenon they want to create. Visualization determines not just the form of a spell, but also its limitations. A mage who imagines fire as a spreading wave will naturally produce flame magic that behaves like a wave. A mage who imagines cutting as a linear force can create slicing spells that obey that mental model. This means spells are personal rather than universal. They reflect how each mage conceptualizes their own power. Even standardized spells vary slightly between users because no two people visualize them in the exact same way. The rule applies to all magic, whether learned from a grimoire or created independently. This system also explains why unusual or highly specific spells exist. A spell becomes possible the moment a mage can imagine it with enough detail for mana to follow the intended pattern. Simple desires, such as heating tea, cleaning rooms, or trimming plants, can become formal spells if someone imagines them thoroughly. This makes the magic world expansive and inventive, with countless niche spells created to solve everyday problems. But the same rule allows for extremely powerful combat techniques, since a mage with a strong and unconventional mental model can manifest effects others never considered.
話が見えない。イメージの話だよ。
Zoltra is a beam-type spell that converts raw mana directly into destructive force with almost no additional structure. Its simplicity is the key to its power. The spell requires minimal shaping, allowing nearly all of the caster's mana to be directed forward as a concentrated attack. Because of its straightforward form, the spell travels quickly, pierces most magical defenses, and places very little strain on the caster's control ability. This made it one of the most efficient offensive spells ever created. The spell originated from Qual, a high-ranking demon mage whose goal was to invent magic specifically optimized to kill humans. His version of Zoltra produced a dark, condensed beam capable of puncturing magical armor, something no human spell could achieve at the time. The ability to ignore conventional defenses forced humanity to build new strategies and redesign their magic from the ground up. Over decades of study, human mages refined the spell, stabilizing its structure and adjusting its mana flow so that it could be taught within the basic curriculum of magical education. Through this process, the original killing spell evolved into the standardized basic offensive magic seen in the modern era. Its widespread adoption came from a combination of accessibility and necessity. Since the spell required very little structural complexity, students could learn it more quickly than other offensive spells. The threat posed by demons also made mastering Zoltra a priority, leading to its integration into core training across generations. Although contemporary defensive magic can counter it, the spell remains effective in combat when used with precision or high mana output. Its simplicity also means that specialists can amplify its power far beyond the standard level, allowing experienced mages to overwhelm modern defenses through sheer force. This is why characters like Frieren, who trains extensively with Zoltra, can produce results far beyond what is typical for most mages. Defensive magic was created as a direct response to Zoltra. When Qual's original spell appeared, no existing defensive structure could withstand it, because magical barriers of the time were designed around blocking complex elemental spells rather than concentrated beams of raw mana. Zoltra's simplicity made it uniquely destructive. It delivered force faster than barriers could adapt. To survive against demons using this magic, human mages collaborated to design a new defensive spell capable of absorbing or dispersing a Zoltra's linear mana output. The resulting defensive magic required extremely high mana consumption, but offered reliable resistance to beam-type attacks. Its structure works by forming a dense wall of stabilized mana in the target area, preventing Zoltra from piercing through by overwhelming the beam with raw defensive mass. Because the spell's construction is so mana-intensive, mages must place defenses carefully and deliberately rather than covering themselves continuously. This produced the tactical style seen across the series. Casters maintain mobility, conserve mana, and deploy defense only at the exact moment an incoming Zoltra threatens a critical point. Although defensive magic can block Zoltra, it has not advanced significantly since its creation. The spell lacks personalization, and unlike most magic in Frieren's world, it does not reflect the caster's inner visualization. Its structure is fixed because its purpose is fixed, to counter a specific threat rather than express a mage's individuality. Modern mages still rely on it because no alternative provides the same stability against beam-type attacks. However, this stagnation means that Zoltra specialists or high-output casters can still break through it by overwhelming the defensive mana layer. As a result, defensive magic remains an essential but imperfect component of the magical landscape. Magic in Frieren's world develops through a continuous cycle of need, invention, refinement, and replacement. When a new spell appears, especially one that alters combat balance, it forces mages to reevaluate existing techniques. Zoltra is the clearest example of this cycle. Its introduction created an urgent need for new defenses, which led to the invention of specialized defensive magic. Once defenses stabilized, Zoltra itself became less lethal, prompting mages to shift their focus toward efficiency, precision, and situational casting. Each stage in the cycle reshaped the magical meta, influencing what was taught, practiced, or discarded. This cycle also affects how mages perceive difficulty. A spell that was cutting edge in one era becomes standard in the next once it has been optimized and integrated into basic education. The original Zoltra was a legendary killing spell, but after 80 years of refinement, it became the benchmark for developing defensive techniques, and, over time, entered the beginner curriculum. Magic advances when generations of mages study an existing technique, adjust its structure, and experiment with output and control. As spells become more efficient or more stable, they spread through society and gradually redefine what is considered basic. This constant evolution also explains why magic remains diverse. When a spell becomes too common or too easily countered, mages begin developing personal variations or entirely new techniques that better suit their own visualization. Innovations accumulate across centuries, creating a vast catalog of highly specific spells, some widely used, others known only to their creators. Because magic reacts directly to imagination, a single mage with a new conceptual model can introduce a spell that forces the entire cycle to begin again. This process preserves the world's sense of historical depth and ensures that magic never becomes static. Human and demon magic differ in both purpose and method. Demon magic is built around efficiency in killing, favoring direct simplified spells that maximize destructive output with minimal structure. Qual's original Zoltra is the clearest example, a beam designed for penetration and lethality rather than versatility or elegance. Demons conceptualize magic as a tool for domination, so their spells emphasize linear power, high-speed execution, and minimal reliance on complex visualization. Their approach produces techniques that are brutally effective but narrow in scope. Human magic, by contrast, develops through collective effort and adaptation. Instead of relying on singular destructive spells, human mages refine existing techniques, experiment with alternative forms, and generate new spells to solve specific problems. The invention of defensive magic demonstrates this approach. Faced with an unbeatable attack, humans repurposed and rebuilt magical theory to create an entirely new defensive structure capable of counteracting demons' most lethal spell. This philosophy also extends to everyday life, where humans create small, highly specialized spells for personal convenience, illustrating how magic reflects their creativity and lived experience. These opposing philosophies shape the world's magical evolution. Demon magic changes slowly because its purpose remains constant, but human magic evolves rapidly because its users innovate based on need, emotion, and imagination. Over time, humans take spells once exclusive to demons and transform them into tools for their own use, turning instruments of oppression into standardized techniques. This contrast highlights why humans excel at magical advancement despite demons' raw power. Their approach encourages experimentation, collaboration, and continuous improvement rather than stagnation. Personal magic emerges from the idea that every spell is shaped by the caster's inner visualization. Because no two people imagine a concept in the same way, every mage naturally develops spells that reflect their psychology, worldview, and emotional tendencies. This makes magic in Frieren's world deeply individualized. A spell is not merely a technique learned from a book, it is an extension of the caster's identity. Even when two mages attempt the same spell, the output may differ in strength, structure, or behavior because their mental images are not identical. This individuality explains why the magic system contains an enormous range of seemingly niche or highly specific spells. A mage who values comfort might create magic to warm tea. Someone obsessed with precision may develop thread-like attack spells that cut in exact patterns. The visualization principle described in the source material emphasizes that as long as a mage can imagine the effect clearly, the spell becomes feasible. As a result, personal magic becomes a window into how characters think and what they prioritize. It also creates a world where magic is not uniform, but expressive, reflecting the diverse experiences and motivations of its users. Personal magic also functions as a strategic element in combat. Since each mage's spells are rooted in their internal logic, understanding an opponent's personality can provide insight into their abilities. This idea becomes explicit in characters like Ubel, whose empathic perception allows her to comprehend an opponent's mindset and, in turn, replicate their magic. When magic is tied to personal belief, psychological insight becomes as important as raw power. This reinforces the idea that magic is not simply a universal system, but a deeply personal discipline shaped by the inner life of each practitioner. Ubel's magic demonstrates the fullest possible application of visualization as a governing rule. Her spell allows her to cut anything she believes she can cut. The spell does not rely on physical properties, elemental interactions, or established magical structures. Instead, it follows the internal logic of Ubel's imagination. If she can construct a mental model where something is cuttable, mana conforms to that belief and produces the corresponding effect. This makes her magic extremely dangerous because its limits are defined entirely by the clarity and conviction of her visualization. Ubel's empathic ability further amplifies the spell's potential. By understanding another mage's personality, she can replicate their magic because personal spells are reflections of the caster's mind. Once she grasps their internal logic, she can visualize their spell as if it were her own. This makes her one of the clearest examples of how individual psychology shapes magical performance. Her role in the narrative reinforces the idea that mastery in this system does not require overwhelming mana reserves or ancient techniques. It requires a mental framework strong enough to reshape what magic considers possible. Frieren's magic reflects thousands of years of accumulated experience, giving her a perspective no human mage can replicate. Because spells evolve across generations, she has witnessed entire eras of magical development. The invention of foundational spells, the refinement of combat techniques, and the gradual standardization of what is now considered basic magic. This historical awareness allows her to understand the logic, origin, and intended function behind every spell she encounters. When she uses simple techniques, they appear effortless because she has mastered multiple iterations of the spell over centuries, refining her visualization to its most efficient possible form. Her long lifespan also affects how she interprets magical complexity. Spells that seem advanced or intimidating to modern mages are often early-stage versions of techniques she learned from their original creators. What appears simple from her perspective is actually the product of extended experimentation and adaptation across ages. She has trained her control to a degree that allows her to manipulate mana in ways that appear casual, even when performing highly advanced magic. This mastery explains why she rarely relies on elaborate spells. The efficiency of her visualization makes even basic magic devastating. Frieren also demonstrates how emotional distance influences magical precision. Unlike human mages, whose lifespans shape their urgency and ambition, Frieren processes time on a much longer scale. This detachment enables deep concentration and meticulous refinement, allowing her to perfect spells over centuries rather than years. However, her encounters with Fern and other companions gradually reintroduce emotional nuance, affecting how she relates to magic and memory. Her ability to grow despite her long life underscores how visualization is shaped not just by knowledge, but by lived experience, and her evolving perspective ties together the system's personal, historical, and imaginative elements.